During the American Civil War, one man's journey was distinguished by intense allegiance, deep remorse, and haunting memories of battle. Meet James Longstreet, a name that invokes both adoration and debate. Join me as we uncover the complexities of Longstreet's life. From his turn, so too did Longstreet's fate. What drove him to align himself with a cause that would ultimately fracture his relationships and tarnish his legacy? Why did his decisions at pivotal battles like unexpected twists, moral dilemmas, and the relentless pursuit of honor in a time of chaos? Longstreet, who was born in the Southern traditions of 1821, rose from humble beginnings to become one of General Robert E. Lee's most trusted commanders. However, as the early military triumphs to the bitter aftermath of defeat prepared to explore a narrative-filled Gettysburg haunt him for decades. Before we continue, please make sure to like and subscribe to our channel to support our community. James Longstreet was born on January 8, 1821, and the quest for redemption is just as far gone as the battles fought. Will you be surprised to learn the truth about the events of January 8, 1821 in the Edgefield district of South Carolina, a region where Southern traditions were deeply ingrained? Join us on this captivating journey through history, where every decision has consequences and the story behind the Civil War's most prominent generals. Although James was born in South Carolina, he spent a large portion of his childhood in Georgia, where he was characterized by the straightforward lifestyle typical of Southern farming families. The Longstreet family had Dutch ancestry and had lived in America for many generations. He was the fifth of 9 children and spent his early years in Alabama, where he learned the values of hard work, honor, and loyalty. Although academics were not Longstreet's strong suit, the curriculum focused heavily on subjects like mathematics, engineering, and military strategy. River in New York, West Point was very different from the rural South that Longstreet had. The academy offered a challenging environment aimed at turning young men into capable officers ready to lead troops in battle. He graduated 54th out of 62 students in the class of 1842, but what he lacked in school was the start of a military career that would last for more than 30 years. His first assignment took him to the Western Front to serve in the Indian War, where he gained valuable experience in leadership and combat. However, it was during the Mexican-American War that Longstreet truly made a lasting impression. After graduating, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the 4th U.S. Infantry, where he formed enduring bonds with future leaders like Ulysses S. Grant and William Rosecrans. He served under General Zachary Taylor and later General Winston Scott, and his valiant actions earned him a promotion to major. And in 1847, Longstreet's bravery came at a high cost. While carrying forward his regiment's colors, he sustained injuries in Mexico that were more than just physical. They were transformative, strengthening his resolve and establishing his reputation for bravery and effective leadership. Despite these wounds, Longstreet refused to leave the battlefield and continued leading his men until battleless events like the Battle of Veracruz and the Battle of Monterey. At the Battle of Chapultepec, he continued to shape his views on leadership and responsibility. The Mexican-American War served as a testing ground for many officers who would go on to play pivotal roles in the Civil War. And for Longstreet, it marked a defining chapter in his career. The country was heading toward a period of peace, a last calm before the storm. He had served with distinction in the United States, but first there was a period of peace, a last calm before the storm. As the United States teetered on the brink of the Civil War in 1861, James Longstreet faced a decision that would alter an essential and bloody confrontation, and Longstreet would soon find himself at the center of it. As the 1850s went on, Longstreet's military career continued to advance, but the Army for nearly 2 decades. On June 1, 1861, Longstreet resigned his post as a major in the United States Army, but his patriotism to his home state of South Carolina and to the Southern cause finally caused him to resign his commission in the Union Army and identify himself with the Confederacy. Not made lightly. Confederate cause, receiving a commission as a brigadier general, General P.G.T. Beauregard. His first significant engagement was the First Battle of Bull Run, which would propel him to the highest levels of military leadership. On July 21, 1861, Union and Confederate forces clashed near Manassas, where he immediately joined the so-called First Manassas, where he established his reputation as a competent leader and was given command of the Confederate Army of the Potomac. Like many Southern officers, he felt a profound sense of duty to his native South. Longstreet's journey into the Confederate States Army marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life, Virginia. Longstreet's brigade was positioned on the Confederate right flank, where they played a crucial role in holding the line against repeated Union assaults. Despite the confusion and intensity of the battle, his performance at Bull Run earned him respect from peers and superiors alike, including a promising start that was only the beginning of what would become a long career in the Longstreet, remained calm and collected, demonstrating steady leadership that would become General Joseph E. Johnston, who recognized Longstreet's potential for higher command. He was promoted to Major General in October 1861 and given command of a division in the campaign, solidifying his reputation as one of General Lee's most dependable and aggressive commanders. He played a crucial role in thwarting McClellan's advance, earning further praise as Longstreet's first significant test as a divisional commander. Union General George B. McClellan's performance during this newly formed Army of Northern Virginia. The Peninsula Campaign in the spring of 1862 saw Longstreet's division at the forefront of the defense, engaging in key battles, including the one from Lee, who referred to Longstreet as his old warhorse. But it was at the Battle of Second Manassas in August 1862 that Longstreet really came into his own as one of the most significant generals in the Confederate Army. The victory at Second Manassas marked a turning point in the war's Eastern Theater and led to a field victory. This attack demonstrated Longstreet's tactical prowess and earned him widespread recognition against Union General John Pope's army, driving them from the Ass as a formidable force. In a decisive moment, Longstreet launched adamantly attacking the field, and his success came not only from his tactical prowess, but also from his ability to inspire confidence and discipline in his troops, who came to trust him as a leader capable of launching the Maryland Campaign in fall 1862, holding off repeated Union assaults at key locations like the Cornfield and Bloody Lane. With momentum from Second Manassas, Lee and this campaign culminated in the Battle of Antietam, the bloodiest single day in American overwhelming Union attacks. At Antietam, Longstreet's troops fought with tenacity and resolve. Confederate Army could retreat further, averting total catastrophe. His ability to control chaos on the battlefield and make quick decisions under duress was once again on full display. Although Antietam ended in a tactical standoff, he was a strategic general who had proven himself time and time again in both attack and defense. By late 1862, Longstreet had established himself as one of the main pillars of Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. As the war entered its third significance for the Confederacy, forcing Lee to retreat back into Virginia, Longstreet's performance further cemented his reputation as one of the Confederacy's most capable year, and his role within the Confederate Army grew increasingly important. The Civil War was far from over, and James Longstreet's reputation as a valiant tactician and dependable leader was well established. By 1863, he had solidified his position as one of General Robert E. Lee's most important figures, shaping not only the war's outcome but also Longstreet's legacy for generations. By summer, he had not only developed his tactical skills but also his relationships with those around him, particularly with Robert E. As we move forward in his history, we will see how decisions made on these battlefields would but the battle that would define his legacy, both tragically and heroically, was about to unfold. The Battle of Gettysburg would be a turning point in the American Civil War and Longstreet's plan. The Confederate Army arrived at Gettysburg on July 1, 1863, and faced the Union Army of the Potomac, led by General George G. Meade. On the first day of the battle, Confederate forces were confident in their abilities, and Lee relied on Longstreet's experience to deliver another victory. After their victory at Invade the North, hoping to draw the Union Army out of Virginia and force a decisive Chancellorsville, Lee and his army in northern Virginia embarked on an ambitious campaign to engage on northern soil. Longstreet, commanding the Yarrow Corps, was a key figure in Lee's pushing Federal troops through the town to high ground south of Gettysburg, where they took defensive positions along Cemetery Ridge and Cemetery Hill. Lee and Longstreet met on the evening of July 1st to discuss the battle plan for the next day. Lee, emboldened by the first day's success, was determined to press the attack because the battle was far from over, and Longstreet would soon find success. He thought that an all-out assault on the Union center could break their lines and result in a decisive victory, but Longstreet, ever the cautious strategist, disagreed. Despite Longstreet's objections, Lee was resolute and ordered a direct assault. The second day of the Civil War would go down as one of the most hotly contested moments in history. Longstreet advocated for a more defensive approach, suggesting that the Confederate Army maneuver Washington, D.C. He thought this would force the Union to attack on ground of his choosing around the Union left flank to take up a strong position between the Union Army and where Confederate troops could effectively set their artillery. Longstreet's role in the events at Gettysburg has generated controversy for generations. General John Bell Hood was tasked with leading the assault on the Union left at the Peach Orchard, Wheatfield, and Round Tops. Union troops, especially the 20th Maine under Strong Vincent, mounted a legendary defense. Longstreet witnessed chaos, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. Tops, Longstreet was acutely aware of the risks involved. As the attacks began in the late afternoon, his men faced fiercer resistance from Union defenders. The fighting was brutal, and the Union line held firm at the Peach Orchard and Round Tops. Meanwhile, assault on the attack stalled and casualties increased. Heer acknowledged that the choice to attack the Union EFT had been a costly one, but he was willing to obey orders even if it meant sacrificing his instincts. On the third day of Gettysburg, he was convinced that a concentrated attack on the Union center would break their lines, which set the stage for the infamous events of July 3, 1863. That evening, Longstreet wrote a letter to his wife, reflecting on the events of the day, expressing doubts about continuing the attacks and concern for his men, but remaining willing to bring about one of the most famous and tragic moments of the Civil War, Pickett's charge. Lee was not going back now. Despite setbacks, Lee remained determined to continue the assault. At around 3 p.m., 12,500 Confederate soldiers started to advance across a mile of open ground toward Cemetery Ridge. The attack, later known as Pickett's Charge, was met with a devastating barrage of Union artillery and musket fire, which Longstreet could only watch in despair, a schism, as they were cut down in droves. Longstreet had serious reservations about this plan and was reluctant to give the order, but he complied out of duty. In the aftermath of Gettysburg, Lee and Longstreet met to discuss their treatment back in Virginia, and Longstreet knew that they had just lost not only this battle, but possibly the war as well. He had been unable to persuade Lee to adopt a different strategy, and the consequences were dire. Confederate forces were pulsed with massive casualties. The charge were killed, wounded, or captured. It was a crushing defeat for the Confederacy. The Battle of Gettysburg was a turning point in the American Civil War that haunted Longstreet's professional career for years after the war ended. Longstreet's role in it would be remembered as one of the most pivotal battles in American history, and his treatment of it was solemn. The Confederate Army of Northern Virginia was now a shadow of its former glory, and troop morale was shattered. Longstreet saw the battle as not just a military defeat, but also a personal one that would be closely examined and discussed. In the years that followed, his decisions at Gettysburg would be both defended and criticized, becoming central to his legacy. As we continue Longstreet's story, we will see how Gettysburg's legacy followed him into the final year of the war and beyond. The decisions made in those 3 fateful days would cast a long shadow over his life, shaping not only his role in the remaining battles, but also his place in history. Longstreet himself felt that the battle was a source of deep regret, a moment when his loyalty to the Confederate Army was a bitter pill for both Lee and the Confederacy. The Army of Northern Virginia, once increasingly unwinnable, struggled with diminishing resources, low morale, and harsh realities that seemed to mark the beginning of a long and difficult road. Although Lee accepted responsibility for the defeat, Longstreet's relationship with Lee was strained and the war was far from over. After their treaty at Gettysburg, he returned to Virginia with their disagreements still present. Longstreet's cautious approach further distanced him from the Confederate cause, and he remained steadfast in his commitment to Lee's aggressive strategy. The Confederate High Command hoped that Longstreet's presence would help the struggling army in the Western Theater. He was ordered to leave Lee's army in the fall of 1863 and go to Tennessee to reinforce General Braxton Bragg's Army of Tennessee. His arrival in Tennessee was met with mixed reactions as tensions between Longstreet and Bragg quickly surfaced. Longstreet's relationship with Bragg was strained from the beginning. Bragg was well known for attacking Union forces under General Ambrose Burnside at Knoxville. Despite their disagreements, Longstreet was given command of a significant portion of Bragg's army until December 4, 1863, which was characterized by difficult terrain, inadequate supplies, and fierce Union resistance. Longstreet's forces struggled to make headway against Burnside's deeply ingrained personality and poor relationships with subordinates, and Longstreet was not an exception. The Siege of Knoxville, which lasted from November 4th to December 4th, 1863, would prove to be one of the most difficult and frustrating troop experiences. The most notable engagement was the failed assault on Fort Sanders, where the situation was made worse by the Confederate coordination between the 2 generals. Longstreet and Knoxville's relationship deteriorated further after Longstreet reached a breaking point. Longstreet's frustrations with Bragg's leadership grew, causing him to become increasingly frustrated and openly question Bragg's leadership. Longstreet and Knoxville's relationship deteriorated further after Longstreet reached a breaking point. Longstreet played a crucial role in the Confederate defense. On May 5, 1864, the battle of this campaign began with a fierce and exhausting battle in the Eastern Theater, where wilderness erupted in the dense forests of northern Virginia. The fighting was fierce, and returning to Virginia, Longstreet joined Lee's army just in time for the Overland Campaign, which culminated, and Longstreet eventually withdrew his forces back to Virginia in the spring of 1864 after a series of brutal battles against Union General Ulysses S. Grant, Longstreet's old friend. Thick underbrush and limited visibility created a hellish environment for both sides. Longstreet's steady leadership during desperate situations and assaults was instrumental in repelling several Union disasters. On May 6th, Longstreet was accidentally shot by his own men in a friendly fire incident. The bullet struck him in the shoulder and neck, leaving him severely wounded. Longstreet's injury was strikingly similar to the one that had claimed Thomas Stonewall Jackson's life a year earlier, and it kept him out of action for several months. The bullet damaged his windpipe and nearly severed an artery, making his injuries life-threatening. Nonetheless, Longstreet managed to recover thanks to the expertise of Confederate surgeons. During his absence, the Confederate Army faced some of its most difficult challenges, but October 1864 was bittersweet. Longstreet's return to the Army was welcomed by his comrades, but the situation for the Confederacy had grown increasingly dire. His recovery was slow and painful, forcing him to relinquish command while Grant continued his relentless push toward Richmond. Longstreet, who was still recovering from his wounds, played a crucial role in defending Petersburg and supporting Lee and the Confederate cause. The final chapter of Longstreet's wartime service was Toll. Despite his wounds, Longstreet returned to command, determined to use his experience and tactical acumen to hold off Union forces for as long as possible. As the grueling Battle of Petersburg, which lasted from June 1864 to April 1865, went on, it became evident that the Confederate position was untenable. The fall of Petersburg would pave the way for Richmond, the Confederate capital, which would delay the Union's progress. But the odds were overwhelming. In April 1865, the Confederate lines at Petersburg finally broke, forcing the Army to retreat, and Lee and Longstreet would face the last chapter of the Confederacy. Like many others, Lee knew that the end was near, and they went to Appomattox Courthouse, where the end of the war seemed inevitable. Longstreet stayed by Lee's side, doing everything they could to make the once proud Army of Northern Virginia a shadow of its former self, and Longstreet met with Grant at Appomattox to discuss surrender terms. Although Longstreet was not present at the meeting, he solemnly witnessed the end of the uncertain chapter for Longstreet and other officers. Despite the bitterness of defeat, Longstreet maintained dignity and honor in surrender. He later praised Grant's conduct during negotiations for his respectful treatment even in overwhelming loss. The surrender at Appomattox marked the end of the war, but it was not Confederacy. The surrender marked the conclusion of the American Civil War, and it began a new generation of Confederate soldiers. This moment highlighted Longstreet's dedication to honor and duty, marking the end of Longstreet's story. The years that followed brought new challenges. Longstreet's legacy, like that of the Confederacy, would be debated for generations as he tried to rebuild his life in a divided and war-torn nation. The Civil War had left the South in ruins, with cities destroyed, economies shattered, and people divided. The war's end marked a new and challenging chapter in Longstreet's life. After that, he returned to his family in Gainesville, Georgia, seeking to pick up the pieces of his life-heavy toll on his physical and emotional well-being. His affiliation with the Confederacy made it difficult for him to secure a stable livelihood, and the Reconstruction era was full of uncertainty. Despite his wounds from battles like Wilderness, he continued to be plagued by them and mourned many lost friends and comrades. The South's post-war economy was in ruins, and like many former soldiers, he navigated a hostile and rapidly changing landscape. During this trying time, he turned to an old friend and former adversary, Ulysses S. Grant. Their relationship, which was founded on civil wars, was characterized by mutual respect. Grant, the current President of the United States, offered Longstreet support. His influence helped Longstreet accept a federal appointment, and his willingness to work with Republican Reconstruction policies, including African American suffrage, further alienated him from his former Orleans, a role that enmeshed him in Reconstruction politics. Longstreet's cooperation with Southerners led to him being criticized in the South for securing various government appointments, including Surveyor of Customs in the new administration. Many former Confederates saw him as a traitor for siding with the very government they had fought against. This choice to align with the federal government came at a personal cost. In Confederate Southern society, he was cut off from many former friends and allies. Longstreet found himself at veteran reunions where he had once been hailed as a hero. He was accused of betraying the cause for which someone had died, making his legacy in the shunned and ostracized. The bitterness of defeat, coupled with deep divisions within South, made the political climate during Reconstruction volatile. What do you think about James Longstreet's legacy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you're interested in learning more about figures from the Civil War era, check out our video on another influential figure, where we dive deep into their life and impact on American history.